In today's sermon, Pastor Travis reflects on a moment at a wedding and the unexpected lessons it brought to light. Just like a music promoter tries to bring attention to an artist, the disciples were meant to promote the good news of Jesus, but they struggled. Join us as we dive into how Jesus calls imperfect people, like the disciples and us, to follow him, even when we don't have it all figured out. This is a message of hope, grace, and what it truly means to serve others in the kingdom of God.
So I was officiating a wedding in a historical Grand Rapids venue a couple of months ago. It was a great day. The couple was really happy, the decorations were on point, and the DJ was getting his equipment set up for the ceremony and the reception. It turns out that the DJ lives in Grand Rapids, but works a little bit down here in South Haven, being a music promoter for Lake Arvesta in town. I'm not all that used to hearing about music promoters outside of bigger cities or who are trying to get people noticed, but this guy's job is to promote musicians to play on the weekends here at Lake Arvesta's restaurant. And when you promote things, you want to make them known. If it's an author, you want to promote their book. If it's a musician, their music. If it's a magician or a comedian, their craft or their shtick. Promoters are usually very good at what they do, unless you happen to find your promoters in our gospel reading for this morning from Mark. The promoters are the disciples, but it turns out that they're really bad at promoting themselves or the one that they're supposed to promote, Jesus, and the good news he brings. Jesus is walking with his disciples to Jerusalem. They pass by Galilee, and Jesus doesn't want anyone to know because he's deep into teaching mode. Jesus teaches his closest 12 friends that the Son of Man is to be betrayed into human hands, hands that will kill him, but then 3 days later he will rise again. And they didn't get it. It's the second time that he's said this to them, and they still don't get it. This time, Mark adds, and they were afraid to ask him. They were afraid to ask for clarification. They were afraid to try and understand what they needed to. You can't promote what you don't understand. I don't know about you, but I remember being that way in school. I didn't want to ask for help with what I didn't know because I'd look stupid in front of the class. Or maybe the words betrayed and killed were the showstopper or fear producer for the disciples. Whatever the fear, they never respond to Jesus. They just keep walking. But they aren't silent. They start talking about something familiar. Who among them is the greatest? It's like a group of friends comparing scores on a big test, or like pastors talking about how many people came to church last Sunday. Who's the greatest? It might be about who hit the most goals, measurables, or targets in the corporate setting. And still, it could be about who shot the best on the golf course. We can all fall into this mindset more often than we'd like to admit. And maybe, just maybe, it's not entirely about who's the best. Perhaps the question is, who has the strength to follow Jesus all the way to Jerusalem? Or who truly understands what Jesus is saying? We know that they don't grasp that he's heading to Jerusalem to die. The disciples and Jesus come to Capernaum, where they go into a house. Jesus asks what they were talking about on the way, and no one answered. He knew, though, and he was less than impressed with the conversation. So he sits down with them and says, "Whoever wants to be first must be last of all and servant of all." And then he puts a little child in the middle of them. This is crazy for the disciples. They're guys who are looking to Jesus to teach them a thing or two about greatness, not an invisible child. Children are dirty, messy, and needy, and you don't get anything in return except a smile. Whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me. And whoever welcomes me welcomes not me, the one who sent me. Surprise, surprise, the child becomes the stand-in for Jesus. The very one who is socially invisible has become visible. And and it's painful for the disciples. Children aren't anything in their society. and we have a lot more parallels now. It isn't just about children for us. It's migrant children and their families. It's people with disabilities and their families. It's people with cognitive impairments, those who are on the spectrum, those with long-term COVID, those who are just down and out. And Jesus says, yeah, so what? This is the way it is in the kingdom of God. You disciples think that it's all about you. It's all about promoting yourselves. But true self-promotion isn't about you at all. It's about what you can bring to those people's lives around you that will serve them and improve their lives. You aren't focused on what you can bring to others' lives. You're arguing about who is the greatest and, presumably, who's tallest and best looking and Jesus' favorite. Do you think you know better than Jesus? Well, you aren't really listening to him. The disciples are not exactly the best representatives of Jesus' message right now. Their actions don't line up with their words, and that hurts their credibility. They're constantly doubting Jesus' leadership while trying to figure out how to get on his good side. It's exhausting, and it sends the wrong message to those who are watching. All this is to say that Jesus is pointing out that discipleship and following him is really hard. You don't have to follow Jesus to receive salvation. You get that anyway. But if you do want to follow Jesus, you have to look at some very different values. And it's hard to do because God's values are most oftentimes nowhere close to ours. It's tempting to set ourselves apart, though, over the disciples, thinking that we get much more right than they do. The truth is that they're just figuring it out on the fly. They don't have years and years of backstory and context. They were figuring it out as they went. Each day, they witnessed miracles and heard stories that pushed them to see Jesus more clearly. Some of it was exciting, some of it was frightening, but through each moment, they got to know him better. The disciples weren't perfect models of faithfulness. They promoted themselves more often than not. But they were real people, trying to be faithful, and that's us too. We mix right and wrong, good and bad, moments of following and moments of not getting it. Mark shows us fully human disciples. We can try to be like them at their best and to learn from their mistakes. And we can find hope in this. Jesus calls people just like them, flawed, real people, us, to walk with them. And in the end, that makes all the difference. For them, for us, and for the world. Amen.
That's this week's episode of Peace Lutheran Sermons podcast. Don't forget to join us next week for another episode. Thank you for listening.